Greg. I'm a user experience researcher at ServiceNow. We do a lot of stuff with AI, and I'm just interested in what more use cases are in other domains.
Sweet.
I'm Lily. I work at XAI. I'm a program manager on the human data team, and I help design human data projects and model training efforts as part of the human data team.
Awesome.
I'm Estelle. I have a dual background. I have 10 years experience as a Montessori teacher, and then I jumped over and spent 4 years in the tech industry at an AI company, and I'm really curious about the convergence of those two spaces within my practice.
That is for you.
I'm Leslie Tyler. I head up marketing at a company that makes phones for kids, and we are starting to build AI tools for internal purposes. So I'm just kind of interested in. I used to work at an ed tech company as well, so I'm interested in AI in education and also live learning.
Hi everyone. My background is in computational mathematics, and now I'm working in designing microchips for training. But I have all along the way always been interested in how to bring back to my local community back home all the tools and advancements that other people can leverage. So right now I'm trying to, I run one small round of copycat Gauntlet AI back at home, super tiny scale, but I think it's a great opportunity for many people, so that's why I'm trying to get a better sense of it.
Where is that from?
Mexico.
Hey, I'm Jeffrey, co-founder of Physics Graph. It's like a math academy, but for physical sciences.
Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry. I also went through Gauntlet, Cohort 1. I now work with the Super Builders, so I'm also just here to help photograph stuff too.
Say cheese. Deb.
Yeah. Hi, Deb here, software engineer. I'm working in biotech right now, but I'm here because I'm interested in how AI is able to help with education and advancement learning, and safety ethics and all of that.
My name is Marner. I've worked as an electrical engineer and hardware for over 30 years. I work for the state right now. I'm just more interested about using AI for my own personal projects. I don't know if that's the way to work, maybe, to see. But yeah, for my own personal things, I'm noticing developments that are happening these days.
Personal projects are electrical.
These stocks.
Glad I asked.
Absolutely be interested in
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So it sounds like a good mix of education interests, AI interests. So we can kind of like use that to weight what we talk about here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reese.
So personally, I'm a bit younger than you guys. I graduated college last fall and studied computer science in college. Hated every minute of it. Dropped out 3 times because they were teaching us Java from literally 15 years ago. I came across Austin's tweet while studying for finals and said, this seems like a sign. So applied, somehow got in, and now we're here.
I gave you the mic because mine was going to be a bit long-winded. I was running my own experiments of Gauntlet with myself over the last year. I had...
Actually, the moment before we continue, who here is already familiar with the program that they graduated from Gauntlet AI? Like about half. So can you give a brief, just like describe what Gauntlet is?
Gauntlet is a 10 to 12 week intensive AI engineering bootcamp of sorts, where on a week-to-week basis, you are given seemingly impossible challenge to accomplish, and a ridiculous deadline puts you under the wave of, I gotta figure things out with the toolings that I'm learning to try and build applications that will allow me to A, learn how to use the tools, and then B, able to bring something that is close to shipping something that's real. You know, in a scope of 1 week, it's very difficult to get production-ready applications, but the idea is to put you under the burner of how can I use this to speed up my workflow, and what could I learn based off of that. And that's what I would say Gauntlet is from a very practical standpoint, and from a theory, I guess, standpoint, it's just a place where you're going to sharpen your mind to a whole new level of agency. It's a place for, are you high agency enough? And you're going to find out by going through the Gauntlet.
Great. So, enter Yash's joining Gauntlet.
Me joining Gauntlet, I was running experiments over the last year when I started by applying it for personal projects, using AI for personal projects. I have this thing called aphantasia. For those that don't know what that is the inability to mentally visualize images. If I close my eyes and someone says, picture something, all I see is black. And I was curious, is this something that I could, restructure for myself? And I started by using simple automations. For those that have come across Zapier or Make, just process flows that allows you to connect one thing to the next. And I was like, okay, how could I use AI to solve this for me? And ended up building a workflow that took a clone of my voice and would send me a download every morning as a mental visualization based on my journal notes. So when I wake up in the morning, it takes whatever I had journaled about prior and would just come up with a visualization. I would go on a walk, and then I would just hear my own voice talking about this, and I was like, by the time I come back home, maybe I could just see something. Didn't necessarily visualize, but it definitely helped in mindfulness practice. So that kind of was like a, awakening of like, okay, I could do stuff like that I could never have done before. I'm just coming up with ideas. So I kept going down that path, and in October of 24, inspired by Kanye West, he had released back in 2010 an album called Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And prior to that, he did something called Good Fridays. And Good Fridays was a practice in releasing a song every Friday. And I was like, okay, this is an incredible practice. Can I do this for myself? So I created a Good Friday for myself, and I said, I'm just going to ship some random project every Friday for 14 weeks. I made it 5 weeks, and then I was like, this is crazy. But that's exactly what we did at Gauntlet. Every week, we had to ship something. So I was kind of just doing this by myself, and then I'd not heard of Gauntlet, and I had some close, really smart friends take a test, which gets you into Gauntlet, and not pass it. And then I was like, well, these guys are smart. They didn't pass it. No way I'm going to take it and embarrass myself. Didn't take the test, but came back from a trip, and just the hype of Gauntlet and what it was doing was at an all-time high, and I was like, there's no way I should not at least take this test. I took the test, which is a CCAT. It's 15 minutes, 50 questions, just an aptitude test, and I failed. I failed just enough so that I could get a second try, and I took the test again, and I didn't pass. However, because my prior background was I'm just going to just keep doing these things because I care about curiosity, I decided to get on Twitter and saw that people were tweeting what the project was. So I just was like, I'm going to do it. So I just saw their tweets, figured out what the project was, and I started building. And then I put a tweet out into the abyss and just said, this is my honest feedback about Gauntlet. This is what I think, blah, blah, blah. And then here's the kicker. I'm not part of Gauntlet. I just chose to do it. And thankfully, that tweet went viral. And Austin the founder was kind enough to say, you've got agency. You got to be part of the Gauntlet. And so that's how I got into the Gauntlet.
Great. So piggybacking off of that, both of you have some experiences in traditional education, and also obviously graduated Gauntlet. can you give a little sort of like comparison of like what your experience was like in both of those, and kind of like your perspective about like the disparity between those things like after the fact, kind of graduated on?
I get to roast college.
Yes, you get to, if that's what you're answering.
Yeah, so as I said, I studied computer science in undergrad, dropped out 3 times. Each time the way it wins, I was go. So I started in finance, whatever. And then I realized I wanted to do something good in the world. So we dropped. Switched from finance to computer science. First class was with a guy named Gary Dahl. And we were studying literal Java from like 2005. For those of you that know programming, I went to him in office hours and said, like, hey man, there are other frameworks, there's React, there's Python, there's so many better languages we can be using. Why are we learning Java from 2005? What he told me is, dude, I graduated grad school in 2005. And there's no reason for me to learn anything else, so I just teach you what I know. And I think that sort of illustrates the problem with college and sort of contrasts it to Gauntlet. Where in Gauntlet, the entire incentive is they don't get paid unless they place us in a job. So it's totally free to us. They pay for housing, they pay for flights. And the only way they make money is at the end of it, a company comes in and they're like, Yash is really freaking good. I want to hire him. And they hire him, Gauntlet gets paid, everyone's happy. So they're incentivized to teach us literally everything we need to know, and that pushes us to the frontier. You know, undergrad on the other hand, it's like they get paid no matter what. And if you're a professor who's getting paid like way less than they deserve, like, what's your incentive to learn the cutting edge AI technologies? And then on top of that, I mean, like, I think the fundamental issue with college is that it trains you for academia. So like, I didn't build a single app in undergrad until the last semester of senior year. Yeah. And the reason for that, I asked one of my professors and he said, we're training you to go to grad school, and once you go to grad school, to do cutting edge computer science research. We're not training you to get a job. That's not what college is for. But then you see all my friends and I ask them, why are you studying computer science? I'm guessing what you guys can guess is they want to make money. They want to work at Amazon. They want to work at Facebook. There's like a fundamental misalignment. I think only 7% of college grads go into academia. So 93% of people are misaligned with the incentives of college. Whereas Gauntlet, it's just like, we want you to get a job, you want to get a job, 12 weeks, you're good. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, the short follow-up before going to Yash is, when did the people teaching you about AI at Gauntlet learn about AI? Compared to your professor learned about Java in like 2005.
Yeah.
Whereas at Gauntlet,
yeah, I mean, it's like literal like day by day. And like the beauty of Gauntlet is it's not even, they don't even really have a set curriculum. The way it works is they put you in a position where you have no choice but to learn what you need to learn. And so what you do is you just go online, you talk to each other, and you teach each other. So like we would have watch parties and Grok 4 would come out, and we would stay up all night, and we would be like, yeah, Lily knows. It is, yeah. And there was no like teacher. We were all teachers for each other. And like I would go to AJ and be like, AJ, what do you do with Grok 4? And AJ's like, dude, Grok 4 is like really good at machine learning, it's really good at this and not good at this, you should plug this in it. And so you just push each other to be on the frontier.
But are you self-learning everything, or is there an actual lesson plan?
Yes, so there's a rough lesson plan. There's usually one lecture a week where they teach you a fundamental concept. So they'll teach you RAG, or they'll teach you MCP or something like that. But then you fill in the details with each other. And if you have questions, you can go to like an expert. So there's like office hours where you can ask questions. But again, another thing I hate about college is like, it's top down. So they teach you everything, no matter what you're interested in, which is kind of why I asked in the beginning what you guys were interested in. Because my favorite professors in college would just go to me before, like, first day, and they're like, Reese, what do you like? How can I help you? Whereas the majority of my classes, it's like a 200-person lecture hall, and they teach you everything in the history of computer science. And I'm like, dude, all I care about is, I don't know, I just want to build Python. Why do I have to know about Kubernetes, and why do I have to learn about everything that you want to teach me? Does that kind of make sense? So it's like one weekly lecture, and then the rest is self-taught with each other.
To bounce off what Reese was just mentioning, I think Gauntlet, Gauntlet carries the thesis of the work is the proof, where college, to add to your point, make an addendum, where by the time that you get to the end of it, a GPA that shows up might put some people in honors, might place another batch of people in a specific other, just like you graduated, but it doesn't expose the work that each of them has done to the outside world. And what Gauntlet has taken is the whole build in public aspect and amplified that and put this in a very time-constrained manner, where each person has to demonstrably show that he or she has learned something by value created. And that's not just by lessons learned to pass an exam, it's by the actual product that gets generated. And, you know, this is a slight tangent, but like Bitcoin is based off of proof of work. You look at someone at the gym and you're like, I see a person at the gym and he looks really like shredded. That's proof of work. The person's been doing time. You go to a marathon, someone runs really fast. There's proof of work that shows up, and Gauntlet has allowed for proof of work from the standpoint of being an engineer. And I think school doesn't necessarily do that. It allows people to go through the education and say you've gotten a specific degree, but doesn't enable them to display that completely. That's, I would say, a huge discrepancy as to why Gauntlet really shines. It's on that model.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I like it seemed like the core points that you guys made respectively were one, just sort of the incentive alignment of like colleges themselves around like academia versus industry, and then also like the test to pass, right? In Gauntlet's case is proof of work, whereas there's like literal tests which like may or may not have anything to do with like what's going on in industry. Having both gone through like both those sets of experiences, so turning it back around, like now that you have those insights and also like know how to use AI to learn things, because like part of like learning a Gauntlet is also the reason there's like instruction is you can use AI not only to code but to like figure out what you need to know, especially since that stuff changes week to week in the LLM world. So knowing what you know now, do you think that because of those like fundamental things you guys identified, that it is like impossible to like make a change? Or like how what would your advice be to any of your like former professors? Whether it's a professor you liked or didn't like, what would your advice be about how to like use AI to sort of like improve the situation in the institutions that were not working?
Yeah, that's opening up Pandora's box for something that colleges already struggle with. I think this has now been 4 years since, 3.5 years, 3 years since ChatGPT came out. So now I think this year is going to be, whoever starts this year's college season year, they're going to have been exposed to ChatGPT since freshman year. So there's not been a paradigm of having used non-AI native work prior. I think now it's more a mirror of recognizing, and I can only, because I've gone through engineering right now, I'll speak only to that, I'm speaking that.
Sure.
The scope of that is to try and recognize that people are going to use those toolings, but it's It's more so as to how could you set it up to recognize that they have learned a certain something and how that can be done. A few ideas is for us going through Gauntlet, you could purely vibe code, but vibe coding is not going to get you towards the end of the week. You're going to have to recognize that there's systems in place that you have to learn to be able to create an infrastructure and an implementation to get to the end. Because if I just, went in and started prompting and said, go build this, okay, now go do this next, it can go in circles and create a bunch of junk that's never going to get to the end point. And I can visibly look at someone and go, that person vibe coded more of this application comparatively to this person who's created a system design. And one of the things that I would do if I were to be a professor in engineering right now is I would grade it based off of how does someone create an architecture for an application. That allows me to look more into the potential thinking process as to why did they get towards designing something a certain way. That gives me confidence to realize that they are a person who is in a position to make decisions moving forward, set up frameworks in place. So I think it's more recognizing within the specific core fields that exist, how do you allow to test for how this person enables thinking to let a task, or in this case AI, accomplish a task instead of just shipping it per se.
Yeah, building on what you said before that, I think the fundamental issue with college is that they grade you on an abstraction. So what I mean by that is you take a test to prove you know how to build an app, but it's like some law, you guys probably know it, but it's like when you start measuring something, once you start measuring something, that measurement becomes useless because people will cram for the test and they don't actually know how to build the app. And the beauty of Gauntlet is it's like, there's no middleman. It's just, can you build an app? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna cheat it because I'm gonna learn how to build an app. It's like, cool. That's what we want you to do. Yeah, I mean, that's the simplest answer. It's just like,
the traditional college thing was to show an employer that you were able to go through a long program, 4 years or more, and then you were able to learn at a certain level. And it was just an indicator of are you capable of maybe doing the job, because most of the work you did afterwards was training on the job. Lots of people are good at book learning, and they're good at learning stuff, and they're good at taking it back on the test, and getting really high grades. But when you put them in the real world where they have to actually apply what they've learned to do something, it's a totally different story. I graduated with 4 other engineers. One of them became a math teacher because she went backwards. And the other one's unemployed right now, so I won't talk more about that. But yeah, I think the traditional model of college is changing now. And it's like, hey, can you produce something? Can you figure out a way of getting to a solution? You don't care about all the book learning you got or anything like that, just get to the solution.
yeah. I'd say building off of what you said, the goal of college is to prove you can do something for 4 years consistently. And I'd say with AI now, it doesn't even prove that, because I can have an essay due at midnight and ChatGPT at 11:58, and on paper it looks like I got an A in the class. Then once you hire me, you realize that I don't know how to work hard. I just know how to cheat. So,
Yeah, the other thing embedded in what you...
Oh yeah, I had a question. You were talking about how you have some people who are purely vibe coding and you have these challenges to do every week. So at what point, with your AI workflow, do you decide okay, what I'm doing isn't enough, I need to break it and build up a different workflow?
What I had discovered from a person who's not had, I was not working in an engineering role prior. I had businesses that I was doing in the media space. I was coming from a media background of podcasting and things of that nature. So when I stepped into it, it was a quick learning lens for me. so it usually felt that the first day was me trying to, I had a lot of conversations with the LLMs for why I want to build something a certain way, because we've got a 7-day scope as to build out something.
Yeah.
It starts on Monday, ends on Sunday. And after, and I can get into this once we maybe get a bit more technical, is I had a specific project on Claude. I used Claude, which I called the project Construction Zone. And I had 5 specific documents which I created. One was user design. How would I go about designing that? System architecture, functional requirements, because there's only a scope of certain things that I can accomplish in this week. What do I want to do for that? Right. A couple more that's slipping my mind in this immediate moment. But when I get to, I usually use the 21st 24 hours to try and iterate on that. So since I had my set of documents there, each week we get a different project. You know, last 2 weeks were capstone. So it's kind of like I had a vision for building a language learning app. And I'd sit there and just talk through and go, okay, this is where I'm trying to go towards. And after getting a scope of that, it was kind of like, let me start building for a day. And when I go build this out for a day, when I get to the end point, kind of now seeing, did I drift far away from what I originally thought? What issues have I run into now? And then start again, like getting back into the whole flow of, am I too far from what it was? What are the new problems that are being caused? And like to Reese's point, you know, you get a chance to like now go talk to people around you. So I got the chance to go to people much smarter than me and just say like, this is what I've done. Where do you think the fallacy exists because I'm running into this issue? And I would be, you know, it was a time for me to learn really fast where it was like, you're kind of not realizing how to do state management, for example, because it's sending a lot of information back to your database and getting it back, and that's slowing your application down. So it's like, okay, I made the wrong choice. Time for me to go back a bit. And so that would, it started, that was kind of like a workflow for myself, and I hope that answered partially, or did that deviate from what you were asking?
Yeah, kind of. So it's like almost you restart every week. It's like, okay, now we talk to LLM and find out what my workflow for this week is. And then you have that deviation that you had last week and how to correct it.
So each week, I suppose, and to your point, you do pick up something new because you've gone through a whole week of learning.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've taken this learning now to apply that, what am I going to do differently? So by the end of the 10 weeks, I came across something called Claude Code Hooks, for example. I'm just going to use that as an example, where it helped me separate away from my dependency on LLMs. So LLMs have, up until now, I've got an issue of holding context, and then on top of context, also holding attention. So it could deviate from recognizing the work that it's working on, and then just creep off to the side. So one of the ways that you avoid something like that is using shell scripts. This is, as soon as I get done with a certain task, I can run a shell script. And that's where Claude Code Hooks comes into play, because Claude Code Hooks allows me to say, you know, when I get a certain amount of a task done, for example, I will do this specific script. And that script allows me to now not dependent on an LLM, where an LLM might be like, when I complete this, I want you to say the words finished yush. But after like a couple of tasks, it might just be like, not, yeah, just exactly, drop that out. So that came into the mix, you know, as I kept going week after week, I was like, okay, I see that attention and memory is an issue. Now I need to add this into my workflow. And this is going to allow me to remove that mistakes, those errors that come into play. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good segue. There was, I think we have one more question on the educational side, and we'll pivot to going about what you guys actually learned at Gauntlet in terms of coding and developing apps with LLMs. So I think the last thing is that both of you mentioned that there's kind of like a divergence of like what college seems to be for and what things like Gauntlet seems to be for. So my question is, do you view that as like a feature or a bug? And like, how would you like help a friend sort of like navigating like between those two things? And like, what category of people would you push to each option?
what is, can you rephrase your question about what is the feature? What, like?
Yeah, like, it's the purpose of college is different than the purpose of a program like Gauntlet, is one of the things that you guys have been talking about. And is that a feature, is that something to be corrected, or is it something that is like fine, as long as people sort of like informed about like their goals and like their alignment with like the institution that they're doing?
I think overall it has to change. It's a bug for colleges. I think at the end of the day, people are going through learning so that they can try and apply it in a ways, and that's, you know, the economy of jobs and the economy of helping back what exists. There might be a few things that schooling in that way really helps. One of which I would say right now is, you know, medical school potentially, and that could just get disrupted via all of AI as well, and employers, that's getting disrupted too. But not many more things prop up into my head where that feels like it's not a bug for colleges. You just have to pivot towards this model because, and the model being, the reason why the creator economy has become as massive as it is because the creators are being put in a place where they're constantly showcasing certain something. And now they've gotten to the point where you see businesses being built by creator founders. These guys have been storytellers who've constantly showcased parts of their life. And it's like, as a viewer, originally, for myself, I was like, this feels like so easy. They're just kind of putting a video out there, and like, now they're, you know, somehow valuable from just putting a video out there. And then you realize, like, as you do that, it's a forced function of recognizing that I have to put something valuable enough for the person at the end of the other side of the phone to say, I want to be able to stick around to see what this is. And that has allowed the same principles there, having to keep sharpening the skill of what can I say or do something interesting enough that engages someone, bleeds into like Gauntlet. What can I keep building that is interesting enough for me to show that I am valuable? And I think the same thing has to bleed into pretty much anything. It's like if you're a writer, put your writing out. You know, yeah, that's where I'll end.
I'll break your question down into two parts. First part is colleges focus on academia. I think that's a feature. I think it's very logical to have a place designed around knowledge for the sake of knowledge. The current structure of college, where the incentives are completely misaligned, I think is clearly a bug. It's like any bloated company. Eventually, a company becomes bloated, gets debt, startup replaces them. It's like this cycle of life. I think it's time for most of colleges to die.
Sure. All right. Well, your question on that? Yeah.
Yeah. Having this year's background, how was hello? So weird. But having this year's background, how was the transition from AI book prompt to, you know, being a prompt engineer, I reckon? Is that what you are now? Regardless of your title, like how was the transition? Having like a coding background plus that prompting.
Going from like college to the boot camp or boot camp to job.
Having the CS background, he said he did a bit of CS, and so they, you know, we were able to do some projects like actual coding versus, you know, I'm not pointing at you, I'm just saying the school. How was the transition? Like, what was the learning curve versus like how much did you add up on the existing knowledge you have? I'm asking from perspective of a software engineer, like how much would I learn, how much would I benefit from this bootcamp?
It's a good question.
Or can you handle things better to
I can expect questions too after, but
Cool. So you're asking, like, currently you're a software engineer. What's the transition from being an engineer to being like an AI-enabled engineer?
yeah, there's obviously like so much out there in the world, but I'm lacking structure system. Like a lot of my AI knowledge is like because of my current project I'm working on. It's not like content or like any of that.
I'd say like the only important thing I learned from my degree was time and space complexity. So like basically understanding systems and then how to design a system to be efficient and to have like a solid foundation. I mean, my first 2 years of CS were just learning the syntax of writing code, and that's useless now. Like AI is just perfect.
So you never have to look at the code? You never go into it and take a peek at what's going on inside?
No, never.
Kind of scary.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're doing, right?
Yeah, if you essentially what I'd say is like I had zero coding experience before the boot camp, so I've never even looked at the code in my whole life. I know. I'm the vibiest vibe coder here. But growing up in that environment, I'm like literally like AI native, where I've never had to code without an AI. So I literally just know how to ask the AI to design tests now to check, okay, how fast does this function work? Can we design edge cases to test this function? Can you stress test this function? And I'll just test it like crazy. And then if it works in every case, it's like, why do I care what the code looks like as long as it works quickly and it's scalable and it does what I want?
Do you read the tests?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That is one thing, actually. There was like 4 weeks during Gauntlet where I was trying to get the AI to write code overnight and test itself.
Yeah, how did that work out?
Not good. Well, like, basically what happened is I would wake up every morning and every test would pass. I was like, holy.
It's the fox walking in the house.
Yeah, I just
You did a great job, I did.
fixed software engineering for the whole world. And I wouldn't read the code. I would just like be like, all right, the test passed. And it's like, yeah, the test passed. I'm like, great. And then I'd run it in my computer and start clicking things and they wouldn't work. And like at that point in time, my brain was fried. This is like, we were doing 80 to 100 hours a week. I was like barely sleeping. I didn't want to have to like dive into the code to actually read it. So I would just paste in error logs again and again and again and again. And then like 4 days after doing that, I thought, you know, maybe I should actually read the code it wrote. And it turns out literally every test, it just had hard-coded in the answer. So what it would do is it would write a test, write a good test. The code would return a number. And then it would be like, code returns 15. We're looking for 200. How do I get the test to pass? What if I just have the test look for 15? And so every test is just like, does code return 15? Yes, test passes. And yeah, let's say the day I found out about that was a very sad day for me. Please.
Okay, so listening to you guys speak and having my background in education, it strikes me that learning hasn't changed. Learning is not going to change anytime soon. The tools we're using have changed. And I've heard both of you speak extensively about the ways that you've had to use trial and error to be able to utilize this tool in its most optimal way. So to me, I look at this and I think, well, as an educator, my job would be to teach students to use the tools that they have. And so, do you feel like there's a space for that? Where do you wish that you maybe did have someone? I mean, you guys are on the frontier of this new technology, right? There's not someone that's come before you that has made all of these mistakes that can say, you probably need a framework for your code, or like, no, it shouldn't probably test its own code overnight. Do you wish that you had that? Where do you see there being space for something like that, a framework in which we learn how to use these new tools?
Are you familiar with Alpha School? A little bit, okay. That's the company I work at currently, and I really like how we design it. So we have 2 parts of the day. The first part of the day is academics. The second part of the day is like real world projects. And one of our phrases is, if you're using AI in the morning, you're cheating. And if you're using AI, if you're not using AI in the afternoon, you're an idiot. So what we do,
What age group are you working?
K through 12.
Okay, you support all.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And so basically the idea is like, first 2 hours of the day, we put you in the mental gym, right? So it's like, I mean, our lives today, we go in the gym and we like pick up heavy rocks. What purpose does that serve? Nothing, but it makes you physically stronger. Same thing for the academics in the morning. We put you in the gym and you pick up like heavy intellectual rocks. You learn how to add, you learn how to critically think, you learn how to memorize, you learn how to do science, how chemical bonds work, all of that. And it just makes it a more fun place to hang out up here. And then we take that brain that you've trained in the morning and we're like, okay, now we know you know how to think. Now you can use anything you want. Use LLMs, use AI, do whatever you want, and just go build whatever you're passionate about. And so like, there's one kid named Alex who's building like an AI plushie where it's like a little like teddy bear you can hug and ask questions and it's your therapist. And like, he leverages the crap out of AI. Like he just like coded an entire AI that he can talk to. And then the next morning he goes and like teaches himself math again. So that's how we've handled it. Does that kind of answer your question?
If I can recall my thoughts properly, context. Yeah. Yeah. Could you ask the question again?
Yes. So my question was, how did you fill in the gap of software engineering with AI prompt engineering? Like, was there like what was the I guess like the reason I looked at him first because he mentioned he had a CS background, and I reckon you would have some coding experience. So like going from that to having full, AI.
Yeah, how I got better by the end of this program, I was literally spending my time whiteboarding sequence diagrams, then whiteboarding, spending a lot of time on the whiteboard. Literally had to take a step back and go, what is the reason that I am doing a certain decision and action? And I don't think prompting necessarily does that. Because if I was to prompt specific things, I'm not able to, I'm not prompting like, hey, here's a one-shot prompt, give me this thing. Or you could prompt as opposed to a way to ask questions. But the way that it worked, and he talked about like, why am I learning Kubernetes? That was something that we had to learn because we had to be able to get production-ready applications that were going to be used by a lot of kids. So it's like we had to go deploy this. And for us to do this, one of the engineers there, fortunately, has had a background in the AWS ecosystem for the past like 6 years. So the curriculum specific to Gauntlet, why would someone want to go through that if they've got an engineering background, if it's only, it could be potentially prompt engineering? It's not, because they've got a curriculum that allows you to see the scope of what is the core reason for building software, for people to be able to use it to solve certain solutions. It's going to range from 10 people using it or 2 people using it all the way to thousands of people using it. But that's still going to require all facets of being used, front end, back end, the architecture, how it gets deployed. So I think as you go through the mix, you realize, like, for me, for Kubernetes, I've got no scope of knowledge in that space. This was where I had to lean heavily on a lecture done by someone else to go, they've said some stuff that sounds like German to me. Now can we like break this down in a way so that I can still deploy my application? But in that moment, I think like what happens being in that environment is you start learning from someone else who has a specific background in certain stuff. There was a person who's a Kubernetes expert, someone else who was really good with computer vision, someone else who's, it was a vast of machine learning, someone who's like very different people that bring in specific things that has made our curriculum itself learn through the lens of we're moving into an AI world, and AI-based applications are meant for personalization. I think like that's the reason why AI is great for software is because it's really just enabling personalization on a scale unlike ever before. And being able to recognize how you can build that personalization with the infrastructure that already exists is something that I think even the engineers learned there, because they came in with, certain biases, et cetera, but then you recognize that someone's workflow is so different as an engineer that in that time horizon, you just speed up having to recognize where you have to remove what your potential bias could be to learn specifically to get a production-ready application.
Yeah.
I'll say like ultra practically, literally what I do. Like right now, I'm looking at building like cursor for video editing. And I don't know about video editing, I don't know about videos, formats, any of that. So literally for the past 4 days, all I've done like 8 hours a day for 4 days is I'm just like in Grok. And I'm like, teach me about videos. How are they handled within a computer? What's transcoding? What are these different dimensions? How does each platform look for video? How is like the subtitles help? What are the options for captions? And so I haven't even written a line of code. I've just been teaching myself for 4 days because of the whole nighttime shabacle where I just trusted it. Now I don't trust it at all. I like become an expert at the topic and then use it to translate English to code. But I always want to be knowledgeable enough to tell it exactly what I want it to do, and then it converts that to code. Yeah.
So I'm currently the moderator, but it just occurred to me that I'm probably also a good person to answer your question specifically, because I also was in Reese's cohort, and I was one of the folks there that had more engineering experience going in. And there was a bunch of those. Some of them had a lot of experience as individual contributors, and there was a few as like other roles as like product and like managers, but not as many of that. And I found that the interesting thing about Gauntlet is that both inexperienced and experienced groups have to learn. So like the inexperienced ones like talk about where they like start out vibe coding and have to gradually like learn more about different like engineering practices like as they go along to like solidify what they're doing. For a lot of experienced people, it's the opposite. They're actually kind of resistant to letting the AI do as much, and they have to like learn to leverage it more and like trust it more. I think there's a small subset that doesn't run into either of these frustrations. I was talking to a lot of other people in the cohort who were like frustrated with like either of these two scenarios and didn't find that I like related much. And what I realized is that the group that I think was like best poised coming in is people who had been managers before. Because sometimes when you're a manager, a funny thing happens, you end up needing to manage ICs that are actually smarter than you or like know more about other topics than you. And you have to verify their work without becoming qualified to necessarily like do like what they're doing, which sounds like difficult, but like once you get used to it, it's like kind of like easy to do, and it like solves for other things like good engineering manager will ask you to do something and ask you to write tests for it, and you can tell them that the test will pass, and but they'll have a follow-up question, which is, are they good tests? Or better yet, they won't even have that follow-up question. They might review your code, they might look at the test, or more likely, if anyone has experience here, is they'll talk to the senior guy on the team and ask him to look at your tests, which you can absolutely do with an LLM. So you can have an LLM write the test, and then in a separate session, you can ask it, look at this file of tests. Why are these good or bad tests? And it'll have an answer. Like an LLM could look at the file Reese described and be like, these all have hard-coded the answer, this is not actually testing anything. And then you can sort of like take that output and then like come up with like more instructions. So if you're actually used to an engineering role where you're not doing much hands-on coding and having to like verify kind of the output of your team, it does actually poise you to also like verify the output of like different LLMs at different stages. That would be my advice to like more experienced people trying to figure out how to leverage LLMs to code. Like the thing I would say is that you should, I struggled early on getting it to do some stuff, and at one point I was like running experiments, and an experiment I chose to run was like, what if I just treat it like a more junior teammate and give it exactly the instructions and information that I give a more junior person? And like, kind of work, and there would be some issues, but like junior teammates also bring back issues. So then like, what would I do at that step? And I continued like taking that approach. And that was the like experiment that like to this date I haven't needed to pivot away from. Like actually like when you're thinking about like AI ethics, you shouldn't like anthropomorphize AI as like a common like talking point. But when you're actually talking about vibe coding, you 100% should anthropomorphize it. Like giving it the same context and instructions that you would give a human in that scenario usually like works. In particular, if you're willing to iterate. All right, I think we want maybe like a little bit more technical content. I could sort of ask some questions to like get that out. It seems that like, there are people with some technical questions about their process, so we could do a Q&A format if folks have any of those right now.
Find out more about how to sign up for Gauntlet.
Yeah, more about how to sign up for Gauntlet. Yeah, how did you want to?
What new applications, please?
Yeah, so the first 2 cohorts ran. They're running a 3rd cohort. I think their applications are currently open.
Go to joingauntletai.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 3 stages. First stage is a coding portion, I believe, right? So it's like an unproctored coding portion where it records your screen, records your webcam, and you just have to prove you kind of know how to code. I think they look for like 1 to 2 years software engineering experience. Then second part, you take an aptitude test, so shows you're like, you can kind of think quickly on your feet. Then third one is they just do a short like personality interview to like prove you're not a serial killer. If you do all 3, you're in. Are you the physics graph guy?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our like boss was emailing about you this week.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's your boss?
Joe?
Oh, all right. Excellent. Yes, I would like to be in time back.
Bootstrapping, right?
Yeah, we're bootstrapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not, well, we're against regular VC money, but not, anyways, we'll talk later.
Is there a question on the other side of the room?
Yeah, this isn't necessarily a technical question, but it's an interesting crossover where we're talking about AI in education, and the way I'll phrase it is, let's say hypothetically you volunteer to teach a community course to people who want to learn how to better leverage AI because they've heard of ChatGPT and they don't know what that is, and they've heard some people have used it to decorate their house or whatever, and they don't know how to do it. How would you, let's say, what would be the outline of your like 6-week community course to enable people to do personal projects with AI?
Community course is like a crash course in how to use it.
Something that would enable someone to be functional with the tools they have available to them. They're not necessarily going to get a job using it, but it'd make their life better if they know how to do it.
What specifically? Like marketing, coding?
Let's say anything. Like I kind of want to know like your principles when you're creating a workflow with AI. What are your principles around, how do you make sure that it stays on task? How do you make sure that you, give it the right parameters to start with, to start a conversation? What do you need to know about coming back to and saving your work? Like the simple stuff that people don't really know just by coming in and starting a session.
This is for like coding and marketing and like just everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick plug. Next Tuesday and every Tuesday after, I have something that I'm hosting called Hacky Hour. I've done this in the past prior to Gauntlet, where I was just hosting a workshop / hackathon, 2-hour scoped hackathon, where it was, hey, this is what we're going to do for this specific event, show up and build. And then I ended up having to potentially workshop through some people who've never been exposed. The way that the timeline was broken down, it's 2 hours. The first half hour was just kind of walk through what tools would be very useful to use in this use case. The next hour is time to go build, and the last half hour is to go share amongst one another. And then if I had to, as I do more of this, I'm going to iterate on it and get a learning scope of like, okay, do people want more time on the back end to recognize that I've learned this and this other person has learned this? How could we share knowledge? So I honestly think that is one of the best ways to go about it, because once again, this goes back to the whole conversation of you learn by doing, and this really puts a person in the time constraint aspect of having to do stuff. I think self-learning courses, etc., don't necessarily do that well, because someone can just take their time and that just drops off. This is like a scoped time. So for you bringing up 6 weeks, I would say, like, even within the whole 6 weeks, it's how do you make the scope within each week so small and time constrained that the person is forced to have to act. That would be my...
I think the prompt, I think Greg's question brings up a really fun meta point, which is how do you approach learning as an exercise? How do you generate metacognitive frameworks for how you approach learning and how you expedite learning through AI? And I liked what you shared earlier about how you curated lists of experts whose opinions you trust and whose pedagogy you trust, and how you then steered the AI into recontextualizing that for your level of expertise, reframing that, and also resynthesizing that for your level of understanding. So I think the question I have is, what are your favorite meta learning strategies for how you direct AI and how you steer AI into helping you understand what the experts are saying? And how might you make that accessible for folks who've never engaged with AI before, for example?
One thing that honestly really helps me is being like radically honest. So I think a lot of people like try and phrase their questions in ways that they think it's supposed to be phrased to the AI. So they'll kind of do like a Google search, like, can you explain to me what Python is? And they just get back a boring answer. More and more I've learned, I just like literally blurt out, like I'll turn on voice to text with like whisper flow or something like that. And I'll just talk for like 5 minutes. Just about like, hey, my name's Reese and I'm from the University of Wisconsin. I did my CS degree in this and I did Gauntlet in this, and I'm like pretty confident using AI, but I'm like not confident in computer science fundamentals, and I'm trying to learn about like cursor for video editing, and like yada 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 yada. And then you start the conversation with all that context, and then it'll give me something, and I'll just go through and I'm like, you said transcoding. What is transcoding? And it's like, oh, do you remember in like your CS fundamentals class when you guys talked about like transforming one variable to another? And I'm like, no, dude, I was like drunk. I don't remember that crap. And it's like, oh, no worries. Let me explain this and this and this. And then I'll literally just break down again and again. And I'm like, oh, you said like, I don't know. I do know what this is, but like you mentioned a string. What's a string? It's like, oh, no worries. Like, and then you just literally keep breaking it down until you finally have like filled in all of these holes, and then you get to that level, and then you're like, okay, now I understand transcoding. What's the next topic I should understand? It's like that's literally what I've done these last 4 days with like Grok. Is I'm just like, I'm gonna build cursor for video editing. What's everything I should know about it? Teach me the first topic, and then like I'm just, because like one thing I love about AI is it doesn't critique you. Like I can literally just be like, bro, what did you just say? Like, I can be like, dude, what's an IDE? And like normally if you're like a computer, like this is a real thing. Like senior year of college, someone said like, oh, what IDE do you use? And I just sat there like, I don't know what an IDE is. Because I didn't want to look stupid. I'm a senior computer science student. But I think like you get past these mental blocks with AI, and you get to a point where you're just like, all right, I'm gonna ask the stupid questions that normally people would laugh at me for. And then, yeah, it's like, one phrase I enjoy is you look stupid once, but then look smart forever.
I think for me it is, I think teaching is equal to learning twice, or whatever the adage is for that. one of the ways that I've been able to speed up my process in this boot camp, engineering-wise, has been, to Reese's point, ask a few questions, but I think once you start asking questions, you get an information overload that takes place that you're not necessarily cognitively be able to hold on to. And I think the best way to flip that script is for you to become either the storyteller / metaphorical person, where whatever it has explained to me, I think putting myself in the spot to then say, this is what I have gathered, and laying down that process. And I think describing that process in a way through my language and for it to critique that, it's been one of the fastest way for me to grow. And like to get very more practical, I suppose, is I record videos of me doing the whiteboard session, of me talking, even if it's not a whiteboard session, of me just talking. And then once I'm done recording that, upload it to Gemini and specifically ask it to critique my thought process for this specific concept compared to where I did pick up the concept itself and where the discrepancy lies. Because that's put me in a position of talking through that entire aspect rather than just being in this flow of, let me ask you a question to give me more information, because I could forget all of that information come tomorrow. So in a very practical sense, I suppose, it's just record that to the aspect of finding that, deviation between what you think you've learned comparatively to what you said out loud, because there always will be a deviation. I don't know if that answers.
And then one more thing, like another practical thing, is just like go on voice mode and just go for like a 2-3 hour walk. And just like, you'll lose track of time and then you'll come back and you're like, what? Like I've been studying for 3 hours. I think just something like, I think the human mind is just designed for conversation. So if you can make it as effortless as possible, that like, it's been a huge unlock for me.
Yeah, in the front.
So, thinking back about education, I wonder what your opinion is on how do you define the strategies and the contents that education should target in the future, given two of the biggest aspects I think can impact your vision right now. One of them is your experience in Gauntlet and the contrast with traditional education, right? But taking into account that there's a huge selection bias in your experience at Gauntlet. It is not the same for selected people to go through it that for a mass market where you can, or you want to leverage it in a mass level. And the other one is understanding how quickly things are evolving. You no longer feel the need to understand how to code from memory, merge sort, or bubble sort, or any of that, right? You say, no, I just need to have a general sense of what to do, but I do need to know that my testing needs to be performed in certain ways so that it doesn't happen, some mistakes happen. But at the pace that things are evolving, pretty quickly, within a few months, you may not even need to know that, right? So what is your idea behind where do we set the target to catch up, or not to catch up, to intercept at some point future generations that are currently learning K-12 with the speed at which things are going?
It's like go where the ball, or kick the ball where the player's going, not where they are right now.
Yeah, but how do we define that, right? Because the pace at where things are going right now is massive. So then, what mental process do you use to define that? Right?
Yeah.
I don't expect in a year for a person to actually think through, hey, careful with the tests so that the code is not hard-coded based on the test. That's going to be included within the next few releases, right? So then, what are the things that you need to learn? I don't know. Have you had any ideas you might have, I'm very,
Yeah.
very interested.
You're taking me down a dark philosophical path, which I try not to go.
I can speak to it. I think that we've like it is. I don't think that for a while we're entering the winter of LLMs and scaling. I don't think that we are going to hit a point in the next year where, to what you're mentioning, hey, go just write all of these tests and it's going to magically just jump to that point. I think like the improvements are going to be rather slow. That's a personal take on this whole aspect. I think the range of what AGI is like, massively defined based off who you talk to and what that even is. You could define it as AGI exists right now in the sense that you're able to, do a bunch of crazy stuff, like just based off of one-shotting things to a certain degree, etc. Do I think come next year it's going to get to a point where all of this context as to why an LLM should be doing what it needs to do is going to go out the window? I don't believe so. As of right now, like, if you've been using AI consistently, I think you can look at someone write a piece of paragraph, and most of that written pieces you're able to pick out and go, that's written by AI. But that's because it's not written by people who just spent all that time just feeding in their writing to try and train it to get to recognize that stuff. It still has a distinct aspect of it. And the ones who are, you would be surprised as to, wow, you wrote this with AI, they've been in the works of being that expert. They've been writers for a long time to be able to guide it to, AJ's point earlier for what makes someone good at this position is the reframe of recognizing that you have to be a manager of sorts. And a manager has to be able to guide this in a really, great way. I don't believe we're going to get to the point where this is going to run off and it's going to magically do stuff. I think we're far away from that land. So my take on it might be contrarian in that aspect.
Okay.
As someone that works for Alpha School, why would you say for colleges to die? If that makes any sense.
I don't think it's directly related. I think like my view on college is different than Alpha's official view on college. So don't sue me.
Oh,
Joe.
no. What's your why do you think that?
What I think college should die?
Yeah.
I think it's, again, similar to the analogy of companies, where the natural cycle of like any organism is you gain success, and then once you have that success, you get complacent. I mean, it's like if you look at just companies in America, you're like Kodak in the 1990s. You have a monopoly on film cameras. The digital camera comes out. You decide not to adopt digital cameras because it would make revenue go down in the short term.
But
In my
you still
opinion,
have pictures.
you do.
I came back because I disagree with this sentence.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Please.
I think humanity, as a species, we need knowledge, we need civilization to sustain. And yes, college is failing us right now because it was made for the previous world system or whatever. We have a whole new thing going on the next 5 years. We're going to reshape what we know technology is, what we know knowledge is, what we know civilization is. What we need to do, I feel, is to restructure what education is. It doesn't necessarily have to be 12 years or whatever years, but I think we need to, it's no political conversation here, not involving anything. It's a shame we don't have the Department of Education because they should be doing this right now. But whatever is left to do, I think have a good job cut out basically. Like we need to focus on that before dismantling what we have right now because we need our children to still continue to learn. We still need to know our history, how we got here so we don't repeat it. Again, that's out of the brain. But like I think to make such a strong statement of like do we need colleges, that shouldn't even be a question. Like how do we make it better work for a future job is I think what we should discuss.
I think you're totally right.
Sorry, I shouldn't be
No.
but I do have to.
Okay.
I want to hear you
I was just gonna say, if I'll rephrase it to be less dramatic. I think that the current collegiates, I think a place where people can go to learn for the sake of learning and to improve themselves and to play with intellectual ideas and to debate 100% should exist. I think it's a fundamental human experience. I just think the current collegiate system is a monopoly of sorts, and adding competition to that system to optimize for learning rather than like forcing kids to memorize answers, like forcing political agendas, forcing just like, I don't know, I mean, it's like any monopoly, that's what I was going with Kodak, it's like any monopoly will be hesitant to change. It's like Kodak was hesitant to adopt the digital camera because revenue would have gone down. So digital camera companies replaced them, and we still have pictures. But if Kodak had a monopoly on all of cameras, we would still be using film cameras. Similar to that, I think the digital camera should replace the film camera of the current colleges.
Pictures, we need to optimize how we take pictures.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Totally.
I love that.
Awesome.
Good night.
I'm so sorry.
I think that's a good note to end the live discussion on. We have the room here for until like 9 p.m. So we're able to like hang out and like chat like more informally, even like amongst yourselves, get to know each other. And if you enjoyed this, we'll have the meetup again, same time, first Tuesday of the following month. We're working on getting some like good speakers lined up again. Stay tuned for that on like the meetup page or any of the other event pages where we post this. And thank you for coming.
This is my first time public speaking, so you survived.
Thank you, Yash, as well, for being a great speaker. Just a quick note, if you could just leave the chairs how you found them, and if anyone ever wants to collaborate on education, my name is Tim. I am the co-host with AJ over here. We're looking to collaborate with the community. We don't want this to be like a just us thing, so if you ever feel like you want to present or talk about an idea or a panel, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I saw a couple of super builders people on the site. So, what do y'all say internally? Can you share that?
Not much. I just know that some of the people are definitely interested. We're definitely interested in people out there who are trying to do stuff that's related to it.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of us really admire the Magic Eyes.
Yeah, we do as well.
Like we printed out these books and have like physical copies in this library.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like office library. So yeah, like we love learning from
Isabel's benefits.
Awesome. Yeah, and super builders, like I only found like one small site. Like what's like like goal?
The ethos of
most of our we have that, like artist camp where
Right.
And yeah, I mean, like a lot of us were like former math and like obviously that was system and artists like us. Like to be fair, like cohort 1 of this year, like everybody thought that was a scam. Like if you wanted to do cohort 1 of Gauntlet,
yeah, you were taking risks.
You had to be like really smart, really hardworking, like really authentic, and somehow still unemployed.
I wanted to give you at least that.
Right. My life does what really kind of describes that.
Yeah, like my finger was hovering over the button. And I was like, I got a kid, so.
They are.
I feel that. It is fun. It is not for everybody.
Yeah. I think it would have worked out great if I got in. Yeah, that risk. Yeah, you took the risk, which is great. Yeah. Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Biles.
Yes.
No, I think I went to like one of your game nights.
Oh,
like a year and a
awesome.
half ago.
Awesome.
At some point.
Yeah. Sometimes
I'm
I
gonna
do
take
working
off.
nights.
Thanks for coming on by.
Yeah, because you look really familiar.
Yeah. I saw you and I was like, you look really
Who
familiar
brought
too.
you?
Who brought me?
Yeah.
You.
Oh yes, because I invited you. Yes, it's just been a long time.
Yeah.
I met you at one of these meetups.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Yep.
Sorry, it's been a year. It has been quite a year. Like that was before the baby, right?
I don't remember you having a baby.
Okay. Well, I have an 18-month-old now.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, she was telling me about she went to Gauntlet cohort 1, which is still a risky thing. Oh, you did too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And what are you doing now?
So job is hard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we're
Awesome.
coworkers.
Cool. Yeah, so it's like Super Builders, like, I couldn't tell from the site, does it invest only in Gauntlet people, or like, is it like run by Gauntlet people and investing outside, or how does that work?
Some of the management is from our boss's old company, but generally, like our particular division is all Gauntlet people, I think, just about.
So it's so interesting to hear like other people on my team explain those types of questions to see how how they phrase things. So interesting.
How would you phrase it?
Yeah.
What was the question again?
Like, so is it like investment in Gauntlet graduates, or is it the division run by Gauntlet graduates and it's like an investment house, or it wasn't super clear from the site.
Yeah, it's definitely not clear. Think of it like this.
Yeah.
There's a billionaire.
Yes.
He owns this company that used to be like mergers and acquisitions and software.
Yeah.
Made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Suddenly, he became obsessed with education.
Yes.
And so he started basically like buying education companies, starting incubators to make educational products, and overall just getting involved, investing in educational companies.
Right.
And to be fair, it might sound a little conservative to put his actual kids into the school that he's promoting, so he does have skin.
Oh yeah. I'm a believer in alpha school. Like my kid's gonna go there on some of it, some version of it in 4 years.
So I guess we technically work for Alpha School. Like we're under this umbrella of like all these companies.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird because like there's mobility. Like we could just kind of jump in between these companies that this guy owns.
Yeah.
Like
which is cool.
Yeah.
It's the Musk model, where it's like he brings in XAI people who are like do the Tesla thing, or vice versa probably. But
so there's like 80 of us that are all working on this like gambit of educational apps, educational platforms, literally like starting schools.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's great.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So like, you jump between different companies. Is it mostly alpha, or is it like?
Well, you can't. Some people have. I'm one of the ones that does. I started out at like the actual software company and then jumped to Alpha.
Okay.
And it's not like there's like that much mobility. Most people started at Alpha School and remain at Alpha School.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the best one. I figured that out.
And did it move there or away?
To Alpha School.
Okay. Yeah. The other ones are just like not as put together, or like